UFC 303 takes place this weekend, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my exact predictions for how I think every fight is going to play out. So without further ado, let's get into the video. As always, I like to look at my past performance to see, you know, I'm not just trolling you guys with these picks, but I really guess I am trolling you guys. 5 of 11, I picked Ikram, bad move. Trust a guy with the OV, they said. No, I'm kidding, that's not why I picked him. But Pavlovich, I mean, Volkov just showed him levels, I guess. I don't know how to explain that one. Kelvin Gastelum decision, that's always a free play, as is Nasrat Haqparast decision. Johnny Walker, bad pick. Bad pick. He just forgot how to fight. Muhammad Naimov, he was winning the first 2 rounds, got subbed in the third. What do you want me to do? Fakhretdinov decision, never a doubt, although people said, you know, it might have been a doubt. Muin Gafurov, freest lock on the card. Brenson Ribeiro sub, I had the read. Ribeiro went for takedowns and didn't get starched in round 1. So that was a good read. He just didn't get the sub. He got his hooks in, just didn't get the sub. And you don't get credit for good reads when the play doesn't work out. Long Zhao decision. What do you want me to do? I went to split decision. Like, it was a good pick, all right? Anyways, let's get into these picks. First fight on the card, we have Ricky Simón taking on Vinicius Oliveira. I'm going to keep this breakdown very short. I did a 45-minute breakdown of this card, and the file got corrupted. So this video is going to be like 12 minutes long. I don't have time for this. I'm taking Ricky Simón KO. I think he can crack. I think people are sleeping on Ricky Simón's capability to get in the pocket and crack. Vinicius Oliveira reminds me of the bantamweight Johnny Walker. He's 20-3, and his 3 losses have all been highlight KOs upon himself. So he's either getting the highlight KO or he's getting highlight KO'd. Against Bernardo Sopai, he did get that flying knee at the end of the 3rd round, but if Sopai didn't gas, Sopai would have won. He was controlling him on the ground, he had his hooks in for a lot of the time, and he almost got some submissions. I think Ricky Simón, if he turns back the clock, you know, he's only lost to Mario Batista and Song Yadong in recent memory. Vinicius Oliveira is not those people. If Ricky Simón can just go back to what he knows, utilize the takedowns, avoid the knockout blow from Vinicius, he should win this. And I think Vinicius is going to be a little cocky in the pocket and try to hunt for the KO to the point where Ricky Simón is going to get his KO. Show him levels. Give me Ricky Simón by round 2 KO. Next fight on the card, we have Carlos Hernandez taking on Rei Tsuruya. I'm going to keep this short and simple. Carlos Hernandez, no KOs in the UFC. He does have that technical decision over Denise Bondar, which he kind of got a KO in, but it doesn't count. So no KOs. He got KO'd by Tatsuro Taira, who is not a KO artist. He's a grappler. So that should just tell you all you need to know. I see a lot of people picking Hernandez simply because they're fading the road to the UFC. People that come off the road to the UFC lately have not been good. Yes, there's Rinya Nakamura. Yes, there's that Tatsuro Taira. But, you know, we have Jeka Seregi. We have Anshan Jubli. Like, people look at those guys and they're like, oh, road to the UFC is whack. I'm not. And then we also saw Chang Ho Lee versus Long Zhao last weekend, and that wasn't, you know, taking people out of their seats. So I'm taking Rei Tsuruya. He has insane grappling, insane wrestling. He did get head kicked on the road to the UFC and almost lost. That was a little scary. I don't think Hernandez is doing that. And he almost got armbarred earlier in his career. Hernandez might be able to do that. He is the jiu-jitsu guy in this. That's kind of what he's been. That's the way he's been finishing fights at flyweight, is by submission. So if you want to hedge your Rei Tsuruya parlays with a Carlos Hernandez submission prop, I wouldn't blame you. I have Rei Tsuruya in a parlay with someone later in the card, so give me Rei Tsuruya by round 2 sub. Next fight on the card, we have a greasy heavyweight matchup. Andrei Arlovski taking on Martin Buday. Arlovski's 45 years old, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak, and Martin Buday is not a special heavyweight. If Arlovski was going to beat anybody, it would be someone like Martin Buday. Martin Buday doesn't really throw heavy. I think his only finish in the UFC was against Josh Parisi, and I could be wrong, don't quote me on that, but Jake Collier, he went to a split with Chris Barnett, Lucas Bresky. Then he got a Kimura on Josh Parisian, and then he got smashed by Shamil Gaziev. So Martin Buday is nothing special. He even admitted he started MMA late, and the only reason he did was to lose weight. But it's hard to pick Arlovski. He's 45, and he finds ways to win these greasy decisions, like Vandera split, Jake Collier split. He's made a career off it, but I think the buck stops here. I'm taking Martin Buday by decision, but I think his likely path to victory is to get the sub. So Martin Buday inside the distance, not a terrible play. And Martin Buday by sub straight up. If he can just get the takedown on Arlovski, he's going to win the fight. So as for betting, I might just throw a little sprinkle on Buday sub prop once that drops, but Other than that, I'm not touching this one. This one's a little greasy. Give me Buday by decision. Next fight on the card, Michelle Waterson-Gomez taking on Gillian Robertson. Okay, so Michelle Waterson-Gomez, she is the striker in this matchup, and Gillian Robertson, she is the grappler. Gillian Robertson, her distance striking numbers are not that good. But here's the thing. Gillian Robertson is at strawweight now. She is 2-1 at strawweight, and her only loss was to Tabitha Ricci, who was someone that she just couldn't get takedowns on because she was a grappler of her own. Michelle Waterson-Gomez, she does have some subs on her record, but she's mainly a striker. She has decent takedown defense, but Gillian Robertson has secured a takedown, I believe, in every single fight of recent memory. Even the ones that she loses, she at least gets a takedown. And I think all she needs in this one is one takedown. Michelle Waterson-Gomez, her only win in like the most recent memory was an Angela Hill split decision, which she debatably should have lost. And other than that, I think she's on the decline. She's 38 years old. She's an aging strawweight female. That's not a good look. The thing about Michelle Waterson-Gomez is the UFC always put her up against good competition. So her record is 18-12, but that's really against like upper echelons of the strawweight division. Gillian Robertson, I'm faithful that she will get the takedown. If she can't, this is going to be a greasy decision split for Michelle Waterson-Gomez. That would be insane, but I think Gillian Robertson, her decision equity is not that high, and people are taking her by decision. I'm not really understanding. She's not a minute winner. She's trying to finish. So I'm going to take Gillian Robertson by submission, and I'm going to predict round 3. I think Michelle Waterson-Gomez, she looked pretty bad against Marina Rodriguez in her last one, and even Marina Rodriguez was able to get a takedown. So that alone should just make you pick Gillian Robertson. So give me her by round 3-7. Next fight in the card, Payton Talbott versus Yanis Gamori. Okay, so you guys know Payton Talbott is like a minus 2,500, and that's because he destroyed Cameron Simon in his last fight, completely went into the matrix, entered the flow state, all that stuff. So Yanis Gamori, his only KO loss was a body kick from William Gomi, but if you actually watch that fight, it was a nut shot that the ref was like, that's not a nut shot, and then Yanis was like, but it is a nut shot, and the ref was like, okay, you lose. That was literally the TKO. He has another loss on his record, which is supposedly a submission, but it just says loss on Tapology. So if you look at his fight style, Yanis Gamori, I think he can last one round with Payton Talbott. Payton Talbott has 0 first-round finishes. So if you're going to attack this from a betting perspective, I would say to take Payton Talbott rounds 2-3. If you want to get even greasier, Payton Talbott rounds 3/decision. And if you want to do the greasiest thing of all time, you can just do Payton Talbott by decision. That would be insane if you actually hit that. I think Yanis Gamori is pretty durable. He fought in Brave, and that's a pretty good regional promotion. He went 3-0 there. So I don't think he's some kind of scrub, but this definitely is a step down for Payton Talbott. So give me Payton Talbott by round 2 KO. Next fight on the card, we have Charles Jourdain taking on John Silva. So Charles Jourdain, he is 6-6-1 in the UFC, and his losses have been like majority decision loss, split decision loss, split decision loss, decision loss. This guy's not really getting finished, and the only one who really finished him was Julian Erosa, and that was because he was struggling with Julian Erosa's range. I feel like he overlooked Julian Erosa because, everybody's like, oh, Erosa's chinny, and Jourdain probably thought that. He went all in, and he just couldn't get the knockout, and that led to him, getting finished by Julian Erosa. That's the only loss on his record that I'm like a little trepidatious with. Is that even a word? But Gene Silva, coming off the Dana White Contender Series, he knocked out Weston Wilson. He's beaten some good guys on his record, like a 7-2 guy, a 5-2 guy, some undefeated guys. Like, he's not can crushing on the regionals. He's doing pretty good. But just his fight style, I think Charles Jourdain will be able to neutralize it. Neither guy here has ever been KO'd, so if you're banking on Gene Silva to win, you're thinking he's going to get the KO most likely. Gene Silva by decision, I mean, he did win by decision on the Contender Series, but that is not how he usually wins fights. He's like all in at the beginning, trying to hunt for the finish. In the Dana White Contender Series, he did lose round 1, but then as the fight went on, he started to understand his range, and then he won the fight. I think just Charles Jourdain is just going to show him levels here. I think this is a very good matchup for Gene Silva, if anyone, in the featherweight division. But I'm going to take Charles Jourdain. I'm not a big fan of how he goes like this every time someone presses forward, so that could be an issue. Gene Silva could mix in some takedowns. That could also be an issue. But I ultimately think that Charles Jourdain, pretty good chin. And in round 3, that's like Charles Jourdain's best round. I look back at all his decision wins, and he won round 3 in all of his decision wins. I'm just saying, he's thrown more strikes in round 3 than any other round. So if Gene Silva is going to use the same strat that he did on the Contender Series, which is start slow and strong, I think that will not work against Jourdain. He's going to have to go back to his roots. He's going to have to knock out Jourdain in the early rounds. I'm not buying that. If he does, wouldn't be too shocked. I do have a unit on Jourdain, but I'm going to take Charles Jourdain by decision. I think he can outlast Silva, and I think he can just, outpoint him. So give me Jourdain. Next fight on the card, we have Cub Swanson taking on Andre Fili. The only reason I would potentially pick Andre Fili is because Cub Swanson is 40 years old. It's never good to pick a 40-year-old. But if you were to pick any 40-year-old, I would recommend Cub Swanson. He has 3 KO losses on his record, so people are like, oh, he's chinny. But you look at the KO losses, it's a body kick from Giga Chikadze, which he's hit on multiple people. It's a TKO loss from leg kicks from Jonathan Martinez, which he actually also knocked out Adrian Yanez that way, and it's a flying knee KO from Jose Aldo in 2009. So this guy, Cub Swanson, is durable. I don't think he's chinny. Andre Fili's main path to victory here is going to try to get the knockout on Cub Swanson, and I don't think that's going to happen. Another path to victory for Fili could be to utilize some takedowns. Early in Fili's career, he did shoot for a lot of takedowns, but if you're going to pick a minus 250 off of the chance that he turns back the clock and goes for takedowns, and when he hasn't really been doing that lately, I'm not going to take those chances. I think Fili thinks that he can get the knockout here. And here's the thing. Fili got knocked out this year, guys. He got knocked out 4 months ago by Dan Ige. He got sent to the Shadow Realm. And I'm starting to get Matt Schnelly vibes. I'm not going to lie. Matt Schnelly vibes. I did pick Matt Schnell in his last fight against Steve Erceg. But I'm getting Matt Schnell vibes from Andre Fili. And then we're like, oh, Cub Swanson. He has more wear and tear than Fili. But that's not even true. Cub Swanson only has 1 more UFC fight than Andre Fili. So I think people are just picking Fili off the fact that Cub Swanson is old, and I'm not buying it. I think he can still crack. He got a knockout on Daniel Pineda in the last fight that someone actually engaged with him in a firefight. He got the knockout. So I think we're going to see a similar story here. I think Fili is going to get desperate after the takedowns aren't really working like he thought they would. Cub Swanson, he is 5-7 to the submission, so I understand what people are thinking. But Fili is not a submission artist, so I'm going to take Cub Swanson. I think he's going to get it done inside the distance and give me round 2 KO. In the card, we have Joe Pyfer taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. This is a pretty simple one to break down. A lot of people are looking at the Jack Hermansson fight that Joe Pyfer just fought, and they're like, oh my god, fraud check. So there's 2 ways to go about this. We can look at the Hermansson fight and think that Pyfer is going to, use that fight and learn from it and become better. Or we can look at the Hermansson fight and be like, oh, those are the holes in Pyfer's game. I'm choosing to look at it from the first point of view. Joe Pyfer, he is like all in or bust in the first 2 rounds. Round 1 finish is very live here. Marc-Andre Barriault, the last time he really fought like a power, ferocious puncher in his face was Chidi Njokuani, and Chidi knocked him out in the first round. Marc-Andre is coming off a loss to Chris Curtis in a split and a submission from Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Those aren't terrible losses, but I'm not saying Barriault is chinny, but I think Pyfer is pretty good. This is a big step down from Jack Hermansson, and I think he's just going to find the button on Marc-Andre Barriault. I mean, Pyfer literally has only looked bad in his Hermansson fight, and he won the first 2 rounds on all 3 judges' scorecards. So I'm not buying the narrative that he's going to fall off a cliff. I'm taking Joe Pyfer. I think he's going to get the KO. I think he's going to get it done inside the distance. That's his most likely win condition, and I'm going to take it round 2. Next fight in the card, we have Ian Gary taking on Michael Venom Page. So when this fight first got announced, I was all in on Ian Gary. I was like, what? The odds makers are making the line even? That makes no sense. Ian Gary's going to smoke this guy. But as I always do, I overthink. This is probably going to be one of those fights that I just regret picking Michael Venom Page because I overthought it. But I think Michael Venom Page, his in-and-out style, is going to give anybody in the division trouble. If anybody were to not get trouble, it would probably be someone like Ian Gary, who can negate the in-and-out style with some low kicks. He has good knees up the middle. He could probably utilize those against Michael Venom Page. And in the Douglas Lima fight where Michael Page got knocked out, he was getting pressed up against the cage a lot, and Lima almost landed a couple head kicks while Michael Page was against the cage. So those are Gary's paths to victory, is the low kicks and pressuring Michael Page. But Michael Page, and also Ian Gary can, potentially become Marab and shoot takedowns and, utilize his jiu-jitsu. I see a lot of people saying that take. Ian Gary is like plus 700 for his sub because his sub prop got smashed. I'm not buying that narrative. And I don't even think Michael Page's BJJ is that bad. I think Kevin Holland is pretty good on the ground. And he had Michael Page in some bad spots, and he got out of all of them. So I'm not buying that narrative either. I think Michael Page's in-and-out style is going to give Gary issues. I think he can even potentially get the KO on Gary. We've seen Gary rocked already in his few UFC fights. And ultimately, this is kind of a narrative pick as well, because if Michael Page wins, he's most likely top 5 ranked. He could be next in line for a title shot because Leon is the champ, and you know, UK versus UK. So you could say I'm a little biased. It's not because I hate Ian Gary, but the pick is going to be Michael Page. I think he presents more issues for Ian Gary in this matchup than Ian Gary presents to Page. And I think if this goes to the decision, either guy is live. And I'm just going to take Michael Page. Finally, in the card, we have Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Macy Chiasson. So, Mayra Bueno Silva is a submission specialist. And Macy Chiasson, she's a takedown artist. That's like her game. She's not a big striker. That's kind of what I thought when I first started breaking this down. I was like, oh, Macy Chiasson's going to win. She's the, you know, she's going to piece up Bueno Silva on the feet. That's not really the case. All right, so Bueno Silva's coming off a loss to Raquel Pennington. She lasted all 5 rounds, and she got credited for 3 sub attempts on Raquel Pennington in that fight. Now, in that fight, I did slam Raquel Pennington. I had no faith in Bueno Silva. Her only real win was a submission over Holly Holm, which got overturned to a no contest because she had Adderall in her system. So, but the thing is, Chiasson just puts herself in bad spots, and her only real wins in the UFC are not good ones. She has 2 wins in the UFC against the same person, Pani Kianzad, who's not that good, and every time she has made a step up in competition, she's lost. Irene Aldana, it was 1-1 heading into round 3. She gets up kicked to the liver. Not good for the durability. Raquel Pennington, she was doing pretty good. Raquel Pennington popped her with some shots, and then Chiasson shoots a lazy takedown. Raquel Pennington gets a front choke. That's all I had to see to pick Bueno Silva. The fact that Chiasson will shoot lazy takedowns, that's enough for me to pick Bueno Silva because she is a submission specialist. She, even in fights that Bueno Silva is losing, she whips out the sub and wins. So, and Silva can crack on the feet, low key. So, for all those reasons, Chiasson's low fight IQ, in my opinion, and Bueno Silva's, she's fought the better brand of competition, and she's the sub specialist, and Chiasson is most likely going to engage in the grappling and clinch. Give me Bueno Silva by round 1-7. Next fight on the card, we have Anthony Smith taking on Roman Dolidze. This is at light heavyweight. So Roman Dolidze is a middleweight. This is his first time fighting at light heavyweight. This is a short notice bout. It got replaced like 8 times. Very hard to pick here, considering Dolidze is just a giant question mark at light heavyweight, and he's already looked at middleweight like he's losing his gas tank. So you can only imagine with 20 extra pounds on his body how his cardio is going to look. Maybe it's better. Maybe like without the weight cut, like he actually can move around and it's fine. But without, maybe not. So that's the trepidation with picking Dolidze here, is you don't know how he's going to look at light heavyweight. But every other reason points in the direction of Dolidze. I mean, Smith's last win was Petrino, but I mean, we're not even going to count that. And then the other 2 wins are 2 wins against Ryan Spann, a split decision which he got rocked in, and a submission where Ryan Spann just fell into the submission. Roman Dolidze, I, debatably speaking, think he might have better BJJ than Anthony Smith. Roman Dolidze trained John Jones when John Jones fought Anthony Smith, so I think Roman's already kind of familiar with Smith's game, and I think he's going to negate the grappling exchanges. Smith is not really an offensive wrestler, and if this stays on the feet, I think Dolidze is going to crack Smith. Not saying Smith is super chinny. His recent KOs, they're kind of questionable. That Khalil Roundtree KO, I'm looking at like, maybe he is kind of chinny. And Dolidze can freaking crack. So I think Dolidze is just going to do more on the feet, more damage, and maybe even mix in some takedowns of his own. And I think he's going to sneak out a decision victory. As for betting, I put a unit on Dolidze, but not super confident, but I do think he's going to win. Fighting the card, Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopez. So Brian Ortega, this is short notice for both guys. Brian Ortega's only losses in the UFC have been Yair Rodriguez by a fluke injury, which he then rematched Yair and submitted him. Volkanovski in a 5-round war, which he almost actually got Volkanovski out of there. And Max Holloway in a fight where that was just like Ortega's like first time in the big stage, and it's Max Holloway. Diego Lopez is not Max Holloway, guys, okay? Brian Ortega, he can lose this fight by getting cracked by Lopez. We're looking at Lopez's last 2 wins, and they're both first-round KOs. So people are looking at that, and they're like, oh my God, Lopez's striking is insane. But if you look at his fight against Movzar, yes, I understand it was short notice, but we learned a lot from him in 3 rounds. Yes, he has good striking, but as the fight goes on, the pop and the strikes are no longer there, you know what I'm saying? And I think Ortega just has to outlast Lopez in round 1, and I think this should be an easy victory for Brian Ortega. Diego Lopez is way too comfortable on his back. I think if Ortega shoots for a takedown, Lopez is going to be like, all right, let's go, and poof. And then Ortega's top pressure is going to get involved, and I think Lopez is going to be like, oh, rut-row. Ortega might be better at jiu-jitsu than I am. I'm not predicting an Ortega submission. As you can see, I have Ortega KO round 3. Ortega has 4 third-round finishes in his career, and 3 of them in the UFC. What does that tell you? He breaks down his opponents, guys. Like, his top pressure is crazy. It's one of the best in the featherweight division. Debatably, he's better than Aljo at that, honestly. Just the way he can control people on the mat. And I think he might just get a ground and pound finish. I don't think he'll be able to submit Diego. I think Diego's going to be a little like he's going to fend off the takedowns well. And I think he just might just get some elbows on the ground in round 3. I think Diego might be down like 2-0 on the scorecard. So he might be like, all right, time to go all in. Ortega catches him. Ortega had a masterclass against Korean Zombie. I think people are forgetting that. He had a 5-round striking masterclass against Korean Zombie in 2020. We just think Ortega's a sub guy, and then we look at his fight against Yair and we're like, oh, he's chinny. But this is not the case. This is not the case, guys. Give me Brian Ortega by round 3 KO as the underdog. And then the main event of UFC 303, Alex Pereira taking on Prochazka. This is a rematch from, I think, UFC 299. Let me see. UFC, it doesn't tell me. I think it's UFC 299, and I'm predicting it to go the exact same way. Jiri can't handle the leg kicks, and if Alex continues to land leg kicks, Jiri is going to get desperate like he did in the first fight, flurry in, and get caught with an Alex hook. Yes, Alex Pereira is at light heavyweight now, and his only KO loss recently was at middleweight against Adesanya. He's looked like a new guy at light heavyweight. He doesn't have to cut all that weight anymore, so he's not going to be nearly as chinny. And Jiri could potentially mix in takedowns. I understand that. He did that in the first fight. But then I think that was mainly because Pereira tried to do the guillotine, so he didn't get his underhook, and it was an easy takedown. Pereira got taken down by Blachowicz, survived the whole first round, a full 5 minutes, didn't get subbed. So Jiri by sub. If you want to be a complete degenerate, I guess you can throw some money on that as a hedge. I don't think that's happening. I think if this fight's ending, it's going to be ending in KO for either party. They will be standing in the pocket and throwing. And honestly, Pereira's left hand go boom. I have yet to see it fail. He just did it to Jamal Hill. He did it to Jiri in their first fight. He did it to even Adesanya. It's starting to become like a mythical weapon at this point. So I will continue to pick Pereira until he shows me otherwise. And for that reason, give me Pereira round 2 KO. Thank you for getting to the end of another episode of Finn's Chats. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments who you got this weekend. And without further ado, have a great rest of your day. You savage.